Another great tool for removing unwanted objects or distracting elements in your photograph is the clone stamp tool. Here in this movie, I'll begin by demonstrating how we can use the clone stamp tool in a few different ways. Then we'll take what we've learned and apply it to removing two things from this image. First, we're going to remove the guy who was filming me when I captured the image over here in the background. I also want to remove the logo or this little graphic here on the surfboard. All right, well, before we get to all of that, though, let me first show you how this tool works. We can choose the clone stamp tool by pressing the S key or by clicking on the clone stamp tool icon there. Next thing you want to do whenever you select a tool is go up to the options bar. And let's start off by talking about our brush. Here I'll choose a brush size and then also a brush hardness. Let me first show you what this would look like with a brush with a very hard edge. Now, after you've defined those, just click out of that dialog to close it. Now, the way that this tool works is you position your cursor over an area of the image, hold down the Option key on a Mac, Alt on Windows, and click. That sets your sample or source area. Now notice, let me zoom in so you can see this, as I move this off to the right, I now see what this source area is. I clicked on his face, and now I'm bringing that with me. If I want to bring this in over here, well, I'll just click in Paint, and you can see how I'm now bringing in this into this area. Now, the only trouble is my brush edges are really, really defined. That's because I have a hard edge brush. Well, let me undo that. Here, I'll press Command-Z on a Mac or Control-Z on Windows. And next, let me show you what this would look like with a soft edge brush. Take our hardness down, do the same exact thing, Option-Alt-Click on the face, reposition the cursor, and now click in Paint over here, and you can see how it's now really soft, and it's sort of fading in around the edges. So soft edges often will help you to work to blend things together. Hard edges work when you want to get really precise. Okay, well, let's undo that. Press Command-Z on a Mac or Control-Z on Windows. Let me talk about a few other options. The next one is called Aligned. So far, we've been working with Aligned turned on. What that means is when I Option or Alt-click to set my source area and I paint and let go of my mouse button and paint again and let go and paint again, it's bringing everything over in a way which is completely and utterly aligned. Well, let's say that rather than doing that, we want to have multiple versions of our source area. If you turn Aligned off and Option or Alt-click on it, you can click in Paint, let go, move to a new area, click in Paint, let go, move to an area, click in Paint, and you get the gist. And this way you can see how we're always bringing in that original source area each time I click and paint with this tool. Okay, well, let's undo all of that. And last but not least, let's talk about a really important feature which has to do with working with layers. Now, currently, we've been working on the background layer, which isn't the best option. Ideally, you want to create a new layer and do all your retouching above. So here, if I go ahead and do some retouching, what we'll see is that this is on a separate layer. How is that possible? Well, here's the gist of it. What you do is you create a new layer. Then in the options bar, you make sure to choose this option, Sample All Layers. Then you can do all your retouching on a new layer. This is really helpful in case you make a mistake or need to change anything that you've done. Okay, well, speaking of that, let's now apply what we've learned to work on this photograph. We'll create a new layer. The way you create a new layer is by clicking on the New Layer icon. And let's double-click this new layer, and let's call this one Graphic, because we're going to work on the graphic on the surfboard first. We'll use the Clone Stamp tool. We want to choose a brush size. I don't know, maybe something right around here. We want to make sure we have 0% hardness. We're going to turn Aligned on. This will be essential. It's also really essential that you choose all layers. The reason why we need Aligned on is we have a straight line running down the surfboard. Let me zoom in on it a little more. And what I want to do is just cover that up. So I'll Option or Alt-click on an area of the surfboard where the content is good, reposition that over the area where it's bad or where the object is that I want to remove, and then just click and Paint. You can see how essentially what we did is we covered up the area where the graphic was with a new area, and we successfully removed that from the image. Let's do the same thing with this guy over here off to the left. We'll create a new layer. I'll go ahead and name this one Retouching. Next step, with the Clone Stamp tool, I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller. It feels like it's a little bit too big there. And I'll click out of that dialog, hold down the Option key on a Mac, Alt on Windows, and we'll click To set our source area, I'm looking at my horizon line here. And what I'm going to do is just then click and paint over this. This is going to extend what we have there. So essentially we are taking content and covering up this guy here, which is exactly what we want to do. You'll notice that what I'll do too is I'll click and let go and then bring this over, click and let go, and then bring this over. Sometimes it can be helpful to go and set a new source area. Here I'll Option or Alt click on the other side of where that guy was and then click to bring over some of this. And again, it just can help to work at this from two different sides. We also obviously want to get rid of his reflection down here in the sand. So you want to set your source area, Option or Alt click, and then paint over that. And as I mentioned, sometimes you want to set multiple source areas so that you can get this content out and work at it from both sides. Option Alt click from this side. And just trying to make sure that we aren't creating any noticeable repeating patterns. So we're really paying attention to the texture that we're creating. In this case, I think we did a pretty good job. And really, all that we did, if we turn off the background layer, is that we copied new content up on top of where that guy was, which in turn enabled us to remove him from the frame. And again, you can go over this multiple times to clean it up or to fix it up as needed, but it is a phenomenal tool. Now, this isn't the only tool you're going to use when it comes to retouching your photographs. But typically what you'll do is use this tool in combination with some of the other healing tools. So let's take a look at a couple of the healing tools in the next few movies.